Sorry. Sorry. Mm. Sorry, this is embarrassing. Anyway, thank y'all for popping in. I am. Uh, Hi, Talkative Carl here. I am prepared to talk about, since it's the start of July, not officially, just 2 days since July 1st, one day away from July 4th. And what better way to start off the month of our independence is the Mel Gibson movie, the Roland Emmerich film, The Patriot. And did not realize it was a nearly 3 hour movie. Now, as I went through it all, I had to look it up online. You know, these phones are way too smart because I had to look up and see how accurate this movie is. And right before I was like, how accurate it is. And before I even managed to finish the freaking, like halfway through the sentence, it's automatically fill in what I wanted to know. Is stupid. It's way too smart for my taste. Hold on a second. Getting an alert here. Sorry. Uh, but yeah, I had to look it up and see like how. Not every movie is like super accurate, but it also I really like when there's actual like historical what would be the appropriate word, consultants assisting in like these films to make it at least as like fundamentally accurate as possible. If you're talking about like, well, it's not like a documentary, but if the backdrop is setting, because this is during the point of the American Revolution, I'm pretty sure there had to be some consultant on the film just to make sure they get the backdrop correct. I had to look it up and see like, okay, like what was accurate and what was not. And of course, a good at best half of this is very fantasized. But after I go through like the summary of the film, I will let you know about the accuracy of the film and the inaccuracies of the film, just to make it all clear. But in any case, this, once again, directed by Roland Emmerich, and it stars Mel Gibson as Captain / Colonel Benjamin Martin, who is loosely based on the historical person Francis Marion, Marion. The late Heath Ledger as Corporal Gabriel Edward Martin, the eldest son. Jolie Richardson as Charlotte Shelton, the sister-in-law of Benjamin. Jason Isaacs as Colonel William Tavington. Chris Cooper as Colonel Harry Burrell. Takia Cario as Major Jean Villeneuve, a French officer. Renee Auberjonis as Reverend Oliver. Lisa Brenner as Anne Patricia Howard. Tom Wilkinson as Lieutenant General Charles Cornwallis, uh, uh, as you know, the general of the British Army. Donald Logue as Dan Scott, Leon Rippey as John Billings, Adam Baldwin as Captain James Wilkins, Gregory Smith as Thomas Martin, Mika Borum as Margaret Meg Martin, the late Sky McCall Bartuisk as Susan Martin, the very youngest daughter, because Martin had 7 children. Trevor Morgan as Nathan Martin. J. Arlen Jones as Oakham, a black slave who was forced to fight in his master's place. J. Jones passed away just 2 years ago, and Sky died when she was 21 through epilepsy or something like that. Logan Lerman as William Martin, the 5th youngest son. Peter Woodward as Brigadier General Charles O'Hara Cornwallis, the 2nd in command. Jameson K. Price as Captain Borden. Andy Stahl as General Nathaniel Green, and Graham Wood as British lieutenant. Now, it starts off in 1776, during the American Revolution, and Martin was called for this South Carolina General Assembly, and he is highly regarded as an esteemed soldier from the French and Indian War. And of course, his family, or at least his children, were unaware about all this stuff. We later find out as to why, but everybody expected him to be the first one to sign to fight on. But as Martin states, that, hey, look, I did my duty. I think every state should have be allowed to represent themselves. I won't sign. My principles are to my family, but I won't vote because personally I won't vote to send somebody else's kid to fight in my stead. And if I'm not willing to fight, and I'm not willing to fight, so I'm just going to abstain altogether. So it's not my fight. But the eldest son, I keep wanting to call him Heath Ledger, Gabriel, he sees the importance of fighting for liberty against the British. So he, signs his name against his father's wishes, and he is immediately sent off to war. He even get to, see the sights of George Washington, but we don't really have any scenes with them actually conversing and giving dialogue or whatever like that. But when things are really ramping up 4 years later, his son comes back wounded with some other wounded soldiers. So his house with his freed slaves and a bunch of other people helped the wounded, even some wounded redcoats. But another captain or somebody came in and it's like, okay, let's collect our wounded. Because he figures, okay, this is neutral ground. There's no reason to cause a big thing. But the main villain of this, played by Jason Isaacs, known to be like a kind of like a butcher or whatever. Taviton shows up. The colonel is tells like kill the wounded, burn this place down, and collect our wounded. Kill the wounded enemy, collect our wounded, burn the place down, and he takes Gabriel as hostage to be hanged as a potential spy. And despite Martin's efforts, he couldn't stop him because like this is you're not following the rules of war, because there are rules. This is like, even by today's standards, we there's certain things that we just don't do, because there's decorum. There's such a thing as decorum. Only the most despicable people kind of toss that away, like WWE2 era, which, by the way, I'm going to mention in my breakdown the inaccuracies, but it kind of mentions that they portraying the men underneath Taviton's command, especially Taviton himself, as a very Nazi-like actions in terms of not behaving as Cornwallis mentions, not behaving in the ways of a gentleman. So, despite the what was it, the second oldest son? Which one was it? Yeah, I think it was Thomas Martin. Yeah, it was Thomas Martin who tries to free his oldest brother, but ends up getting shot by Taviton, which sparked something. It kind of reminds me of like the Punisher in a way, because the kids don't know what their father was, but prior to him having like a family, and something snapped. He told like his first daughter, who's still pretty young, and to watch, and the littlest son, who can still like walk and everything like that and talk, and to watch over the youngest daughter, and wait right here, wait for if he doesn't come back by sundown, we need you to go and find your aunt. While he takes his third and fourth oldest, like he has a lot of kids. He takes his, because now he has 3 boys left. No, 4. Yeah, I'm losing count. Shoot, the other 2 boys that are still alive, that's able to fight. He has them come with him, with their rifles, and I think they pretty much use like a very accurate weapons. Let me look this up. Okay. Kentucky flintlock rifles. Uh, the Tower C series pistol used by the British Royal Navy. Racine replica flintlock pistol. Oh, and by the way, I like that how they depict, 'cause they don't shy away with like the brutality when you see they're using cannons and having them taking off heads and legs and stuff like that. Those things, the weapons used around this time, with the round lead balls, those things leave fist-sized holes in you, and honestly, more deadly than any bullet used today, because it just like it's hard to fix something like that. Those kind of fist-sized holes that they leave in the body. It's crazy. The Brown Bess flintlock musket used for by the British Army. The Charleville 1766 musket used by the militia. The flintlock Fowler.
If you're new here, let's just check you.
So yeah, it's I just had to look this up because it's actually pretty accurate weapons used of that time. So I thought it was pretty cool. So the so what he has, because the guy is a war vet. He like immediately gets like in a mode right away. He springs an axe and he tells his sons, okay, I need you to be over there, and when I get off my first shot, I need you guys to start shooting. He uses like lingo about aim small, miss small. So clearly he taught his sons how to shoot. So he utilized kind of like a particular tactic. I'm blanking on what the title of it is, but it's just very unconventional because soldiers like the Redcoats fight a very rigid particular way, like you see like in a conventional army, whereas like people just line up and start firing at each other, because loading a musket takes like a minute to a minute to maybe 2 minutes, loading like the the gunpowder and the wrapper and the gunpowder and the lead ball, and like jamming that sucker in, and like and loading it up. It's a process, and the fact that you have to be definitely need to be trained and and learn how to use it quickly, because it's like it takes a while. You got to be fast while you on the battlefield, especially. But those things take long to load. Take like a minute or so just to load one ball. So they have to while one fires over here, the others get to fire over here. When they're firing, he's already reloading, and vice versa. So they don't know what to do, but that gives him enough time to go in with his axe and dagger and just start like brutally just butchering the rest of these guys, with one managing to stay alive to be picked up, to tell that this guy was like a ghost. I don't know what he was, blah blah blah. It kind of freaks out one of the boys, and definitely the youngest girl, about just the sheer brutality of what their father is capable of. They always seem like a loving father that isn't like like a like any kind of monster or anything like that. They get completely shocked about what he's capable of. So he decides to meet up with the guy he saw at the General Assembly, the uh, uh, Chris Cooper's character, Colonel Harry Burrell. Uh, he fought with Martin, in the French and Indian War. So he decides, okay, I'm gonna bring you in as a colonel, and he has his son, working under, his father's command. So what they're charged with is gathering some, the locals as part of their a militia. So he got some people. Even has we got a cool moment with Gabriel's would-be girlfriend, soon-to-be wife, Annie, to come in and rally more people to fight for the liberty of the country. So, they starting to work together. They even have George Washington make a decree that any slave that fought for the about to say Union, but the fight for the Americas will be free and get a monetary reward for their services at the end of their respective tour. And I love this moment. I just want to mention this now because I probably won't bring it up again. But it's a nice little moment between the guy from the Blade movie. The keeps getting like chopped up by Blade. What is? Hold on. Donald Logg, who plays Dan Scott. Him and the former slave Oakham has this little back and forth. Well, not really like a back and forth. It was just very one-sided. Where Dan gives Oakham some crap like, "What would you do when free?" But you see, Oakham saved his butt in a fight, and it kind of forms like a bond between them. And he even gets even more respect from Dan when, even after his tour is officially technically over, he's still like at least a month has passed long after he could just easily he can leave. Nobody was going to stop him. But it's like, wow, you still here? It's like, yeah, it's like you can have long since gone. But he shows that what Oakham believes, he believes what they're fighting for is, all men, as he's talking about, with Gabriel much earlier in the film, is like, fighting for the freedom and liberty of all people of this nation. And he chose, as like a free man, he chose to still fight, for everybody. He wasn't just looking out for himself, because he could have, legally, because, he's not technically president yet, but he is looked upon as the major leader of this whole entire, force, George Washington. But it's just like they fighting for an idea, and that is just like, it meant so much more than just that one person. And that, it's inspirational. It's just like, they fighting for the life and liberty and pursuit of happiness. There's just the whole foundation of what this nation is built upon. That means so much. It meant so much. And like I said, I'll go over with the inaccuracies and the accuracies and stuff like that. But it's just, it's important for a movie like this to be put out, because it came out in the year 2000, and I think it probably would be just as important if it came out, a year after, because this is a year before the whole 9/11 situation. Movies like this is such an important thing to have, inspirational. So like, sure, it's a little fantastical, but every now and again we need something like this because it's like, it's important. The meaning behind it is important than any kind of inaccuracies, because they're now a documentary. If it was a documentary, it'd be a whole entire different story. But it's just the sentiments behind what the people in the historical consensus, what they fought for. It meant so much more to them to set a path forward for this nation to carry on. Sure, America has its issues. America has its, skeletons in its closet. We all know this. But despite all that, this is probably like the best car on a shitty street. Without, because with our Bill of Rights, our, our Constitution, it means something. It set the foundation that, despite our issues, we can come together as one, because America's a melting pot. We, people come here for a reason, come here legally for a reason, but this foundation, we are certain freedoms that we have that no other country has, despite any sense of democracy some other countries might have, like Canada or Paris, or England. It isn't the exact same as how it is in America. Like, the freedom to say, what we want, not free from the consequences, but you have the obligation to say, whatever, to, pursue whatever you want, and it's just like, yeah, it's kind of cool if you think about it. Putting your personal biases aside, just the idea of America, it's just like, yeah, it's a big deal. Despite its issues, it has its issues. As a black man, I can, say, yeah, it has its issues. But despite that, we managed to overcome a lot and, fight for that. We'll never be perfect. No country can never be perfect. But the fact that we still try to strive for that means a lot. Because, we're better than we were even back during the American Revolution. Even way before that, we're better than that. We're taking baby steps to be better. And we're working together in concert to strive to get to that point. Anyway, I just bring that up here really fast. Anyway, so under Martin's leadership, they managed to like really disrupt Cornwallis's, certain pockets of the war, and really mess up, because they're militia. They're not fighting the conventional stuff. That's George Washington and people under his little watch over in a different part of the Americas. Well, Martin and Harry, and the people underneath them are fighting like a little lower in the lower half of the America. And one such skirmish, Martin managed to not only take Cornwallis's 2 dogs, but also his personal effects as well. At some point, most of Martin's men gets captured, and Martin in a very slick way, because he shows how like an effective leader he is and a skilled tactician he is. He, comes in on a white flag and brings in Cornwallis's dogs, and it's like, look, we got your stuff. I bring back your dogs. Look, I got. If you look through your telescope on that ridge, I got your 18 of your men, all different ranks. So, since you are supposedly a true gentleman of this warfare, despite certain people underneath your command will that say otherwise, that do otherwise, I trade you 18 of your men for 18 of mine. So he agrees to release his men, as his which is kind of dumb if you think about it. It's like, why didn't you send to go somebody up there to check before you do the release? He was taking a big gamble on the fact that Cornwallis won't have somebody to go check of the care of his men. It's all just scarecrows dressed in red coats. So he ends up releasing the hostages for fake hostages. So, completely embarrassed, he gave Tavington, pretty much releasing a rabid dog onto, just onto the field, and he ends up trying to find his people hiding Martin's family. Of course, they manage to get out and gets taken to the gullahs, where a bunch of other free slaves are setting up like a refuge. But other people fighting under Martin aren't so lucky. One of them, whose wife and son got murdered, he got so distraught he ended up taking a pistol to his own temple, and it shows, because sure, we look back on it during this time, I won't say fondly, but it's just with great admiration and respect for what they fighting for. But at that time, you saw like the stress and they were left uncertain whether or not they was going to win. They didn't know what the outcome was going to be. They were taking like a huge leap of faith on winning this war. And you see like, the stress is, getting to them. Some people question whether or not they should desert at all. There's even moments where, Baldwin's character decided to, early on go to the Redcoats and fight for them because he believed in like the Queen and country and all this other stuff. He even committed like the ultimate betrayal later on. I'll get to that in a second. But they decide, okay, let's take a week, go spend some time with your families. If you don't return, nobody's gonna label you a coward. Completely understand. This is getting a lot. It's taking. I acknowledge it's taking a toll on everybody, especially after they've watched one of their friends take a bullet. Taking a bullet to themselves to the head. It was like it was sad. It was very sad. So Annie and Gabriel decides to wed, and those two are very charming, and you believe in that chemistry, and it's like a funny little thing between them where she earlier in the movie she recounts how when they were little he put like some kind of ink in their in her tea, and she had like black teeth for nearly a month. So she got him back by putting like black ink in his tea. And then when they end up kissing, they both end up with black teeth and stuff like that. That was pretty funny. There's moments like of levity like that I appreciate, because it gets, the tension gets very serious, and you need the release of that tension with some level of humor to kind of offset that. So that way, it's kind of like the purpose of a filler arc in a way. Just kind of like a funny filler arc to kind of relieve, the tension of the bigger narrative. So while in the Gullas, Gabriel and Annie get married. As a wedding gift, Martin presents Annie a necklace representing the North Star that belonged to his late wife. And then you might see this very weird by today's standards, but I guess kind of less so back then. But even still, I doubt it was looked on kind of like, okay, where Martin and his sister-in-law hook up, and it's like, I don't know about that. It's kind of weird. These kids looked at this is these kids' aunt, Charlotte Shelton. It's kind of funny that it's like her name is Charlotte. Oh no, I'm thinking of Charlottesville. This is Charlestown. I was about to say, like, wait a minute. But anyway, it's like, this woman has been these kids' aunt, and nobody's gone ill. It's like, you would be taken aback. I doubt even back then that looked upon as like, I guess because, outside of the family, they might not like, yeah, you've been a widow for a widower for a long time, and I guess, but and they end up having a kid, mind you. It was like a baby at the end of the movie, and it's like, so this is your cousin slash, I don't know what the sex with the baby was, but this is like, cousin slash brother or cousin slash sister. It's very weird. And I was like, and it's like, they kind of gloss over that. I guess you don't want to really kind of focus too hard on that, but even still, that's kind of, it'd be different if like, there was probably no kids from the first marriage. So it's kind of like less kind of gross. So it's like, if like the first wife didn't have any kids and somehow she died somehow, and then the sister-in-law, him and her spark up a relationship, and they had kids, that'll be less gross. But you have 6 kids. Used to be 7, but it's like, and all of them recognized this woman as their aunt for years. I'm not going to dwell too hard on it, but I was just like, wow, that is kind of gross. But then Annie and her parents and a bunch of other people come all the way back to their homestead in the town after the whole wedding situation, and Tabberton gathered the townspeople up inside this church, and with nobody giving up the location of Martin and his militia, he ends up burning the entire place to the ground, which he had Baldwin's character Wilkins do it, which he hesitates for a minute, but ultimately, because Talbotton pushed him. It's like, hey, didn't you tell me when we first met that anybody who aids in the aids the traitors to the British who works against the British are just as guilty, blah blah blah. So it's time to put your money where your mouth was. So he ultimately did it, land the first torch, and burned the entire place to the ground, which caused Gabriel to be completely distraught. And he takes a couple of people out where Talbotton and a few of his cronies are like having like a little mini camp, a mini base camp, and they all fight off each other, this squad on squad. All of there's a cool moment where the preacher of that particular church who fought in the militia, he takes a bullet for Gabriel, and right before he falls, he tosses up his rifle, and in a cool smooth move, because it's already loaded, he Gabriel takes it, aims, and fires at Talbotton, whose men all fell down in battle, and he takes the bullet into the gut, at least the left side of his gut, but he managed to survive and kills Gabriel before Martin able to arrive in time. So now he lost 2 boys in this entire fight, and this is where things like it gets his faith is wavering until he sees this American flag that was in his son's possession that earlier in the movie he saw tattered on the ground, and he, little by little throughout like the first couple of acts, he's been stitching up little by little, and it's very subtle. You see it come back in a big way, and mind you, this is like the first the American flag first edition, what before like the Civil War, way before the Civil War. This is where George Washington's wife, who created the very first American flag with the circle with all the stars, and you see it all patched up, and he comes riding on in with that American flag, and it is like a big deal. They all like cheer and see that American flag as he rides on in, and they about to take the fight to Cornwallis and Talbotton. Where was they fighting at? The cow pens. Once again, Martin is a brilliant tactician in this. He, comes up with the idea after reading through Cornwallis's private journals earlier in the film. He acknowledges, because it's one of those like art of war stuff. One of which is like, know your enemy, and the fact that Cornwallis, his biggest weakness is his pride. He fought in more wars than they can do in their lifetime. So he used that to his advantage, because he Cornwallis thinks the militia are just a bunch of farmers with pitchforks. He grossly underestimates them. So Martin takes the bulk of the militia out in front and set up in like a conventional warfare type of thing, and as they firing off at each other, Martin orders a retreat, and as the British are going over the hill, the main army is ready, with the bulk of the forces, and starts firing at the charging enemies. Kind of like a hit and run tactic. And as the survivor militia falls down as loading their weapons, while the main forces is firing off their ready guns. Then it's like, this tactic that George Washington used called volley fire, where you got these different types of guns. It's kind of like, firing off in, concert, one row's firing off while another one's being prepared as the previous one is loading up for their next shot, and boom, 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 boom. Then it's like, okay, this is like this is going bad for Cornwallis at this point. So, but Taverton, who was under orders to wait for Cornwallis's orders to fight. Now, Taverton isn't a real character, wasn't a real person in historical context, but Taverton, who is eager for glory, completely ignores his leader's orders, and that's a bad thing, because there is a hierarchy in military. You can't have anybody going rogue like that, because it, especially during battlefield, because it breaks everything down. A lot of wars got lost because of, insubordination. And it isn't like insubordination for a good cause either. But even when it's like a good cause, it's still a bad time. You cannot do that. There is a hierarchy. The person at the head, they call the shots. At the end of the day, they get the final say. Especially if they give you strict orders not to do something, you do it anyway. And now look what happened. Everything's going, going tits up for the Redcoats at this point. And as the colonials are charging at the key point that they have to take, you see a moment where Martin sees Taverton and the French commander, who, by the way, is telling everybody his people are on their way to back them up, which they ultimately do at the end, because we know the story, our historical, story about how the French came in to help George Washington during the Battle of Yorktown and all this other stuff that ultimately won the war in its totality. But he tells Martin that we got a chance to take the ridge there, and we see this cool moment where Martin recognizes the importance of claiming this territory is a lot more important than his revenge. So he takes the American flag, he charges the ridge, and it's a big deal at this point. And you see the frustration on Cornwallis's face at this point. It's like, this is not going well at all. And he knows he's, eventually he's going to have to announce a retreat at this point. Then Taverton comes back around. Now it's like they're a mano fight with Martin, and Martin receives some slashes, but then he impales Taverton in the chest and takes a bayonet into his throat. At that point on, we see like a little bit of flash forward where George Washington and his company ultimately wins the war, and Martin and his family go back to his home where his men help rebuild his house, and that's where the movie ends. Yeah, so The Patriot is one of the I'm pretty sure it won a bunch of accolades. It's like It is just like an incredible film. It was nominated for 3 Academy Awards: Best Cinematography, Best Original Score, and Best Sound. It received several Guild Awards, including American Society of Cinematographers awarded to Caleb Deschanel for Outstanding Achievement in Cinematography, and the Hollywood Makeup Artists and Hairstylists Guild Award for Best Period Makeup and Best Period Hairstyling. So I want to start going over the inaccuracies and accuracies of the film. Inaccuracies: British brutality. The film depicts British soldiers as, especially Taverton, as cruel and sadistic, even comparing them to Nazis. This is a gross exaggeration of the historical reality where atrocities like burning a church full of civilians, as depicted in the film, did not occur. Slavery. The film's portrayal of slavery is also highly inaccurate, showing free slaves living contentedly and treated as family. In reality, slavery was a brutal system with widespread abuse and violence. Francis Marion's character, while the character of Benjamin Martin is partially based on Francis, the movie sanitizes his history, omitting his documented mistreatment of slaves and violence against Native Americans. Specific events. The movie includes scenes like the burning of the church, which is based on a similar event from WW2, not the American Revolution. The accuracy in broad strokes. The film does accurately capture the atmosphere of frontier violence and partisan warfare that characterizes the South during the Revolution. That is very true. It is like dead on. The movie depiction of the general fighting style and use of militia forces is broadly accurate. The film's portrayal of the tension between loyalists and patriots reflect the Civil War aspect of the conflict. In conclusion, The Patriot is a fictionalized drama, not a historically accurate account of the American Revolution. While it portrays some entertainment in broad strokes of the historical period, it should not be relied upon as a factual representation of events. So yeah, it's still an incredible good time movie. Highly recommended. Probably one of Mel Gibson's best performances. Him and Heath Ledger are the biggest standouts of this entire film. Everybody else was on their game too, but those two are major standouts. Of course, I would not, ignore Jason Isaacs' portrayal as Taverton. He is just like, of course, it's Jason Isaacs. Of course, he's just killer of an actor. But man, his portrayal as this villain is just so good. You can just see like, yeah, this dude just doesn't hesitate and just, in his brutality and just the sheer, just like encapsulating villain. It's just, you can just tell a lot by this character, even just from the few snippets that we got of his past about him. He doesn't have to. This shows great writing, mind you. The fact that we don't need his long diatribe about his, exposition regurgitation that you see in most movies, where it's like you're reading somebody's baseball card. Just little stuff like, you come from I expect better from a person of your esteemed, familiar background, and it's like, and he just fires at Cornwallis. Is like, my father was like, this and that, and like I paid my own way. So it's just little dialogues like that. You can just leave up to the audience to pick apart from that little bit of his own personal history prior to joining the British Army. But yeah, this is an incredible film. Yes, there's quite a bit of inaccuracies, but it's still such a great film. And just, like I said, it's not a documentary, but it's just, what it represents in terms of the importance of the American Revolution and what it means for the future of this country. I think that, and then it's all behind the fact that this guy who lost a son and ultimately a second son in this fight that is bigger than him ultimately. But we're more engaged, because we have this kind of personal connection with the main character. But anyway, yeah, that was The Patriot. Believe I got like at least have a do a double feature review next week with both versions of Judge Dredd. I figured that was like a good time to really rewatch those for the month of July. So look forward to that. I will be playing some games because I didn't realize this was a 3-hour long movie. But I will be, playing some games, trying to, get enough done because this weekend I'm not gonna be streaming, but I'll be back this time Monday for more content. But in any case, I will see y'all soon. Take care. Have a wonderful evening.